folks? It's CJ here, and coming to you with another movie review. This time, talking about the film Venom. Uh, Directed by Ruben Fleischer, starring Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, Scott Hayes, and I believe Reed Scott. Uh, okay, so going into this film, I was keeping an open mind. I remember seeing the first two trailers for Venom, and it didn't necessarily really hit me to the point where I was hyped for this movie. As much as I love the MCU movies and I love Wonder Woman, I love Man of Steel, I love the Nolan Batman movies and stuff. Um, you expect a certain level when it comes to these films and stuff. I mean, because even though some of the weaker MCU movies, there's a certain level of quality there to where even when those movies stumble, you can still walk out of it feeling that you were very entertained and you still had a very competent and good movie on your hands. So I was going into Venom with very low expectations and stuff, and I wanted to be very fair to this film, because even though it's not connected to Spider-Man, could you do a Spider Venom movie without Spider-Man? It's tough, especially if you know the character, but you have to kind of picture it in a sense of the general audience that don't know jack shit about Venom. So I saw a lot of reviews saying that this movie is on the level of Catwoman. No, it's the movie overall is not as bad as Catwoman, but that's not saying much. It's bad for a different set of reasons. So just to get it out there, I'm not judging it because it's not an MCU movie. I'm taking out the fact that Spider-Man is not in this film. Far from that, but because I think to go into this movie with that kind of baggage, you have to kind of it's unfair. So you have to kind of go into this movie knowing what they're doing and knowing what they're establishing and such. So to me, Venom as a movie represents the type of films that we were getting close to 20 years ago. That era where we were getting the Blades, the Spider-Mans, the two Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, Daredevil, Elektra, the X-Men films, and things like that. And that was an era where those films were trying to figure out how to really do these comic book movies good. Like, they were fine in the realm of what these movies were at that time, because it was kind of one of those like, well, shit, at least it's better than Batman and Robin. At least it's better than the 90s Captain America. At least it's better than the fucking Roger Corman Fantastic Four movies, but that's not saying much because you can only go but up after that. And Venom reminds me of that era where you can put out a film like this and it'll go over just because, oh God, this character. And to me, Venom reminded me of the first Ghost Rider movie. Let me explain what I mean by that. The first Ghost Rider movie, I remember very vividly people's reaction to it, and the one big positive, the positives out the movie was mainly from Nicolas Cage as Johnny Blaze, the effects for Ghost Rider and the motorcycle, and that was it. You didn't hear anybody praise the villains. You never heard anybody praise any other characters. No, I mean, nobody really gave two shits about Eva Mendes. Nobody cared about fucking homeboy that played the devil. Nobody cared about Blackheart and his cohorts and stuff that came with him to Earth. Nobody really gave two shits about the story. I didn't hear nobody praising the story. I mean, Sam Elliott was a bright spot too, because we got that kick-ass sequence with the old Western Ghost Rider and the new Ghost Rider riding along and stuff. And it's a dope scene. Even to this day, it's a dope ass scene. But like, that's all people praised was Nick Cage and the Ghost Rider the special effects for the Ghost Rider himself, and that was it. And Venom reminds me of that, because it reminds me of a movie that, if you really look at all the reviews leading into this movie, it's universal the fact that Tom Hardy is pretty good for the most part as Eddie Brock, especially when you factor in the dynamic that Eddie Brock in this movie that Eddie Brock has with his symbiote, with the symbiote with Venom, and it just works. So it's like, yeah, you can say that he carries it as that dichotomy and stuff, but there's a bit of a hiccup to it because outside of them, Riz Ahmed is playing kind of like an Elon Musk type character. What was it? Carlton Drake. And he ends up becoming a very forgettable bad guy because he has this idea, in the aspect of, oh, we want to make everybody join with the symbiotes because people of Earth are fucking it up, and he ends up becoming Riot, and the planet ends up turning into the Planet of the Symbiote storyline from the comics, where they want to bring all the symbiotes to Earth and conquer it and stuff. And Venom in this movie, he's kind of the outcast, but it's not in the way that you think it is, because the thing is this, right? Riz Ahmed, his villain is, you don't really care. Ultimately, he's just there, and that's it. You got Michelle Williams playing his girlfriend slash ex-girlfriend at one point in the movie, and she's given things to do, but it ends up becoming a waste when it really comes down to it. Which is a shame because you got a movie that has these great actors and actresses in it, and they don't really, it doesn't amount to anything. It's just there, it exists and stuff, and it is troubling because you wish that the movie is basically a bunch of good ideas that miss the mark and don't hit the landing perfect. Case in point, right? So while I'm praised Tom Hardy's portrayal of Eddie Brock and his relationship with Venom at one point in the movie and stuff, and how that works. On the other hand, tonally, it's a 180 from what Eddie was as the character. Now, I'm not saying that, like, Hardy does a great job of illustrating Eddie when he gets a symbiote, and he's going nuts and he's all in shock and all like, oh, I got the symbiote. He portrays that well. The kicker is that before that, though, Eddie goes from this hard-hitting journalist who's really an investigative journalist who's really just hard-hitting. He's trying to break up these corrupt corporations, as we were told and stuff. And, he goes from that up to a point where he's up in Carlton Drake's face like, didn't you do this with your company, Life Foundation, da-da-da-da. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. He's very on the nose. But then all of a sudden, next scene, he switches gears, and now he's this like he's like this Woody Allen, wispy kind of like, oh god, that kind of thing. It's like, well, what the hell? Like, why are we doing this? Like, no, keep it there, And like I said, when it bleeds into how he's all in shock and all this, the symbiote and him and Venom talking and having this conversation and stuff, you at least get that. But prior to that, it comes out of nowhere how he gets all wispy and that kind of thing. It's like, really? Like, and it's just, it's kind of weird to me, at least to me. On top of that, the story really isn't nothing home to write about. Like, the first chunk of the movie at the beginning is just slow as shit. Like, it's boring. Because at that point, you're just waiting for Venom to pop up and then boom, that's it. And by that time, the movie's already close to basically being over. Because the movie goes by quick. Don't let the 112-minute running time fool you, because it's less than 112 minutes. And like I said, I'm not knocking it I'm not being such a stickler on that angle, but like, it really, you could tell that it felt like there were certain things cut from it and stuff. So on a story aspect, it stumbles and stumbles and stumbles, and there's spots where I get what they're trying to do, but it doesn't necessarily stick the landing like it should. So you got a story and stuff. The editing, hit and miss and stuff. And again, it goes back to, I think Tom Hardy came out and said that they cut like 40 minutes out of the movie. And you could tell at spots where it's like they had some good ideas of what they wanted to sit there and do, and then it just got cut, and then boom, this is happening and stuff. And it's like, really? Like, okay. So you got the story, you got the editing, the special effects of Venom. So, I told me and Dee were talking about this, and I was like, you know what? I'm cutting Venom some slack because I love Black Panther. I love that movie. I think the special effects, particularly when it came to Killmonger and T'Challa's fight at the end when they're in their respective, Black Panther suits and stuff, it was very wonky and stuff. While the actors did a great job conveying their emotions and stuff during that fight, the CGI when they're in the full suits is just very hit or miss. Very hit or miss. So I went into Venom not judging it. I feel that what we got of Venom in this movie, it's leagues better than what you got in Spider-Man 3. Now, if that's the bar we're at, of course it was always going to get past that. It's a question of the fact that these symbiotes have faces that look Spider-Man-esque. You have to kind of call that into question because in the comics, and just to really kind of go back into this, so in the comics, Venom as a character had multiple hosts and stuff that wasn't Eddie Brock. You had Eddie Brock, you had Matt Gargan, Flash Thompson later on. There was another person that was Eddie, that was Venom too and stuff. But the three main ones that really kind of got some spotlight was Flash Thompson, Matt Gargan, and Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock being kind of the mainstay that we all know from the comics and stuff. So in this movie, one of the issues that I had was with Venom eating people, and you might be saying to yourself, well, has he eaten people in the comics? Well, it's a bit tricky on that. So in the mainline Marvel universe that you know and love, you see on the comic book shelves and stuff, all that's kind of a mainstay. Venom as a character never ate people. Harmed them too, sure, but it was never a case of outright hate. Not eating people. I guess it wasn't a case of that. It was just he harmed people and that's it. Now in the Ultimate Universe, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker's dad and Eddie Brock's dad, they made a symbiote suit that was basically used to cure cancer and other diseases of patients. It was their way of kind of finding a way to do that, and that was their way. Now, the upside is that whoever had the symbiote suit, basically super strength and all that stuff, the downside to it was that it was eating the host. And in order for the host to survive, it had to eat other people, i.e. take their life force and all that stuff in order to receive sustenance and keep itself alive. Now, that is something that this movie is using. It's taking pieces of everything. Now the thing of it is, I'm not going to knock that angle because here's the thing, the MCU movies do it. They pick and choose certain things. Like a good example of it is Hawkeye. Hawkeye in the mainline Marvel comics, when he first debuted, he was a character that was a thief that worked alongside Black Widow. He ran afoul of the Avengers and he became Avenger and stuff. He started out as a thief and that's it. Now in the MCU movies, he's a shield agent. Now that sparked from his character in the Ultimate Comics, who was established. Him and Black Widow were established as shield agents. So that was kind of something that I like that the MCU used instead of the typical he's this person that was trained in the circus to become a great archer and all that stuff. You make him a shield agent, which means he's a very trained person and stuff, trained soldier, and that works. So the angle that they were going in this movie with him, the symbiote and stuff, basically the context in which the Life Foundation were doing is they were getting vagrants and essentially using them to find the perfect person that would match up with the symbiotes and stuff. And if you were expecting this movie to give you the Venom symbiote family, you're going to be very disappointed because I know a lot of people were theorizing, this is Riot. What you do get Riot. This is the other ones, and you don't really get them and stuff. You get hints of the other ones, but for the most part, it's just kind of one of those things where if you are a huge comic book fan, you're going to sit there and say, I know that Easter egg and stuff. But back to the symbiotes, the idea that symbiotes need a perfect match in order to survive, I thought that was an interesting angle and stuff, which is why I didn't knock him eating people per se, but that's not Eddie Brock Venom that does that. I mean, that Matt Gargan's Venom did that, and like I said earlier with the Ultimate Venom was eating people and stuff. So I understood those two, and it felt like with this movie they were trying to do the Matt Gargan thing where it's like he has Venom and he eats people, and then when he's not Venom he has this scar thing, and that's what this movie tries to do, which by the time you get towards the climax of the movie, they finally get to a point to where they have an agreement or whatever and stuff. But um, but the special effects, going back to that, sorry, side tangent on that. Um, I thought it was fine. I didn't knock it and stuff. I would say when it came to the final fight between Venom and Riot, it was a bit wonky at times and stuff. But like I said, I'm not grading it too harshly because again, I love Black Panther to death. I still stick with my score for that, but I just feel ultimately there was some wonky stuff in the CGI. So I'm not going to knock the CGI per se in this. I would say they could improve it. They could definitely improve it. But like I said, it worked. Like I said, the Riot and Venom fight was fine for what it is. Like I said, again, wonky as it is, it worked. I'm not necessarily knocking the CGI. I think it worked. Like I said, again, it's better than the Spider-Man 3, but that's not saying much. Um, Characters, other than Eddie Brock and Venom, you don't really give two shits about the other characters, which is unfortunate because it could be. And I hate to say this, it's like even in other comic book movies, even when you have your side characters, you still care for them. I think in this movie, the characters that we should have cared about, whether it's Anne, that's Michelle Williams' character, or Carlton Drake, you don't really give two shits about them, and it's a shame because you should, but they don't. The movie doesn't do a good job to really make you care about them, And like I said, it's unfortunate. Um, so you got the story, you got some of the characters. I think the ideas of them trying to do the Lethal Protector and Planet of the Symbiotes, in concept, it could have worked. I just think ultimately at the end of the day, you have a movie that just limps to the finish line and becomes serviceable, which is it goes back to what I said at the outset. That's why I feel this movie reminds me so much of that era of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans and stuff, where it was enough just to say the characters on screen and people are going to flock to the theaters and see it anyways because reasons. And like I said, I personally feel that it's not enough to just give me a movie, Venom, and you don't put that same care into the story. And I think that's what this movie is. It's just a race to get to see Venom just so everybody can pop, but there's no substance behind it. And that's what ultimately what you got in this movie. There's no substance behind it. Yes, I can pop for Venom and say, oh, that's dope. He's doing this, he's doing that, but there's no substance behind it to really back up the ridiculousness of it. And that's on top of the tone being all over the place and stuff, and they can't just stick to it while also still doing it. Because don't get it twisted. I'm not saying you can't make your jokes when you're doing it in this movie, but you make your jokes and then you keep it moving with the tone of your movie. You don't let the jokes dictate the theme of your movie. And I think the movie jumped around different themes to see what stuck and what didn't stick, and it just ends up becoming a mess. Even down to the post-credit sequence, because I'm spoiling the second one. The second post-credit sequence is literally just a commercial for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I really hate the fact that Sony did a very dishonest thing and tried to make it seem as though Venom is connected to Into the Spider-Verse on some meanwhile in another universe kind of angle. I think that's dishonest because you're trying to do this thing where you're trying to connect these two movies, and there's no way in hell you can tell me it connects. It can't. And that's a problem to me. It's like I hate the dishonesty that comes from how Sony is advertising this and stuff, and I see why Marvel changed up their logo for it because they don't want people thinking that this is associated to the MCU. Now, it goes back to what I was saying for a while now. I remember seeing the trailers for Venom, and I was like, well, given Venom's origins and stuff, I don't see how they can sit there and do a solo movie about Venom and his origins. Now, do I feel that the movie did a very serviceable job in doing that? For sure. I think it does a pretty good job of that. But at the same time, it really doesn't, at the end of the day, it really doesn't stick the landing. And that, like I said, that's the running theme of this movie is that all these ideas, it doesn't stick the landing. Even with the Tom Hardy and Venom dynamic and stuff, while it's fine at times, at the end of the day, it doesn't stick the landing to what it's trying to do. And it's a shame. So, at the end of the day, if you end up coming into this movie with no baggage and you don't know nothing of Venom, I'm pretty sure you'll probably enjoy it. If you're a person that even has a hint of who Venom is and some knowledge of it, you're going to be very disappointed, you know, and not in the Eddie Brock and Venom dynamic, because I think, like I said again, I think Tom Hardy does a pretty good job of carrying that, even though sometimes it's spotty, but he does a good job. I just think everything else involving the symbiote just doesn't land like it should. It's just the overall movie itself doesn't land like it should. There's potential for it to be at least pretty good at the very least, but it's just when I look at it, it's hard for me to necessarily say that it was a great movie. Like, oh my god, I want to see it again. So, but it's definitely not Catwoman bad by any stretch, but it's still a bad movie to me at least, and it's a shame because, like I said, somebody that I went into it with just no expectations, not expecting to be this big, like, oh my god, thinking. Because don't get it twisted here. I'm not asking for theater of the mind here when it comes to Venom. All I'm saying is, if you're going to do your story, do it right. Do it correctly. Make me invested in these characters, and that's the problem, is that Eddie Brock and Venom are the characters that I gave a shit about, but everybody else are just kind of to the wayside. And like I said, it just harkens back to the way that we were getting these comic book movies close to 20 years ago, and now we're in a new climate where it's just, when you, like I said, when you get your Wonder Woman, your Man of Steels, your MCU films, your Batman Begins, and Dark Knight films, this feels like a step backwards instead of a step forward, or at least in line with what we're getting now with comic book movies. And that's a shame because, like I said again, it could have been better. It could have been better. And like, it's not a knock on a movie, because at the end of the day, if you go watch it and you enjoy it, cool. I'm not gonna knock you for it. But just for me, I can't in good faith sit there and say it's just a phenomenal movie. I can't. So yeah, with that in mind, 4 out of 10. I think it's just a bad movie. Doesn't mean it's not watchable, but it's just, to me, it didn't really hit the highs of highs like it should have. And that's a shame. But hey, like I said, Tom Hardy did his thing. We'll see how it goes. And just a little small thing here, though. There were some small things, because for those that don't know, Sony made a deal with Marvel Disney, where essentially Marvel Disney can use Peter Parker Spider-Man and any other Spider-Man characters and stuff. Hence why you get the next movie, Far From Home, you get Mysterio and all that stuff. I think it's going to be dope. And my thing is that since Sony has all these access to everything from the Spider-Verse, that's, and stuff like that, since they can't use Peter, I felt this movie also dropped the ball on that, because there were certain little things, like for instance, and this is a little bit of a line they drop in here. Eddie makes a statement at one point that he left New York because he left the Daily Globe or whatever, so he got fired or whatever. And I'm sitting back like, you could have really used that opportunity to sit there and say that he left the Daily Bugle just to plant that seed. And this is another light spoiler. J. Jonah Jameson's son is one of the astronauts when that ship crashes onto Earth and stuff, with the symbiotes in it and stuff. And they have him by name Jameson, and you're like, oh, okay, J. Jonah Jameson is in this world, but they don't do nothing with it. And like, again, I'm not saying it has to be connected, but you could easily connected that into the fold, and it would have been dope. But like I said, missed opportunity, and it just didn't falter. So that's just small examples of what it could have been. And to me, I just look at Venom ultimately as something that Sony shotgunned, and it's hard for me to believe that this is going to be something that's going to jumpstart this Sony cinematic Spider Universe thing. And it's just hard for me to sit there and see. It doesn't get me excited like I should be excited. I mean, I've seen some people say they're excited for Venom 2. I don't know if they're going to get a Venom 2 personally. But I just feel that I'm just not excited for Venom 2, and it's a shame, because that's basically the summation of the movie, is ideas that just drop the ball and don't get you excited for what it could possibly happen. So anyways, that's my Venom review. 4 out of 10. If you see it, cool. I ain't gonna knock you, but I'm just not gonna recommend it. So, but anyways, bear in mind, I will catch you guys later. Peace out.